This is the Authority Company podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. Well, I'm Joe Pardavila, and my guest today is Rick Tollakson, CEO of Hubbell Realty Company. For more than 2 decades, Rick has helped shape Hubbell into one of Iowa's leading real estate organizations. Under his leadership, the company became known for its extreme builds, including homes featured on Extreme Makeover Home Edition. Inspired by the challenge to think bigger, Rick built a culture focused on teamwork, innovation, and community impact. In his book, Think Bigger, Lead Better, he shares the 8 great principles that guide his leadership and continue to shape Hubbell's success. Rick Tollakson, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Great. Thanks, Joe.
Great. I'm glad you're here. And I can't wait to talk about Sister Stella Neill. We're going to get to that in a minute. But I want to talk about your amazing journey of how you got here. And obviously, you write a lot about it in the book. Now, you stepped into the CEO role after Jim Hubbell, who held that position for more than 20 years. Did you feel added pressure taking over for someone who is not only successful, but also carried the family name of a company that's been around for over a century?
Well, I was pretty involved with most things in the company anyway at that time. So I had a pretty good idea of what we're doing and how things were moving forward. And I had an excellent relationship with Jim Hubbell, and that allowed he stayed around for a while. It's not like he disappeared, and we had a lot of communication, and things just moved quickly forward.
And what kind of advice do you give to someone who's been in your case, where not only are you succeeding this gentleman, but also their name's on the building? What kind of advice do you give to folks that have maybe that added pressure of filling those shoes of essentially is like, not only are you taking over the office, but you're almost like grabbing a hold of the name?
Yes, and in Des Moines, Iowa, this name's pretty historic as well, and so there's a lot of responsibility doing that. You have a responsibility not only to your associates but to the community at large, and we take that quite seriously.
And you learned the idiom of think bigger from Sister Stella Neill. We'll get into her now.
Right.
But I'm out of curiosity, is there kind of hesitancy in keeping in this sort of theme of the conversation about when you're taking this role of thinking bigger and worrying about people being like, whoa, Rick, we thinking bigger. We're doing pretty good. What do you mean think bigger? Before we get into the genesis of think bigger, were you concerned about that, about bringing in these like big ideas to a well-established company?
No, I'd already been doing that previously, so probably not as big as what I was challenged to do with Sister Stella, but it really kind of pushed my boundaries a little bit and how far I can think. And my team was all for it, that you get a good team with you and you can do miraculous things.
That's great. Good stuff. All right. So let's talk about Sister Stella Neill. You write about her in the book. You even dedicate the book to her. How did you meet her? And tell us this long-lasting impact she's had on your life.
So back in 2006, we were asked to do the Extreme Makeover Home Edition with Ty Pennington with ABC. And it was out of our market. Okay. This is a family whose house had burned down, and we built a house for them in a week. And it was rewarding, but it was not in our marketplace, not in our community. And I vowed if I ever had the opportunity, I wanted to maybe do something like that in our own community. Well, about a year later, Sister Stella and a woman named Lori Miles basically knocked you over. They're raising money for a capital campaign. And I didn't know them. I didn't know either one of them. Jim Hubbell, that's what's past CEOs do. They say, hey, well, no, you got to talk to Rick about that stuff. I'm not in charge of charitable contributions, philanthropy anymore. So I met with Sister Stella and Lori, and they told me about this organization, Anawim. They provide housing for the poorest of the poor families in our community. They had some single family lots, some duplex lots. They had rehabbed a few apartment buildings. And they were just looking for a capital contribution. And I probably at that time, if I would have said, okay, we'll give you $2,500 or $5,000, they would have said, great, and left. But I said, you know what? How about if I built you a house? I'll build you a house in a week, just like I did for the Extreme Makeover. And Sister Stella looked at me and said, well, Rick, that's very generous of you, but can't you think any bigger? Now, I've been the CEO for 3 years and no one had ever asked me that question. As I tell people, I'm from small town Iowa. I'm a Lutheran boy. I don't know anything about nuns. Okay. Sally Fields, the flying nun, was about as close as I got to a nun. And I didn't know how to take her. But, as I tell people, a quick thinking engineer that I am, I said, okay, tell you what, I'll double down. I'll build you a duplex. I'll build you 2 houses. And she says, well, Rick, that's very generous, but I was wondering if you could think any bigger. And now I'm kind of getting upset. I really don't know how to handle this conversation. Think bigger. How big is it you want me to think? And she says, well, my project here is a 9-plex. A 9-plex? I said, you want me to build you 9 homes? Well, Rick, I just want to know how big you can think. And I'm like, I didn't know what to do. I just was kind of stunned. And I looked at her and I says, you know what? You're on. We're going to build you 9 homes. Well, this was in 2007. 2007, we were having a great year. Followed by 2008, which is the beginning of that recession. We were having our worst year. And I'm like, well, how in the heck am I going to get this 9 houses built for this woman and in this organization? But they hadn't acquired the land yet for the project. So I had a little time to work through it. By 2009, our fortune had changed dramatically and we had things going again. So we, here's the marketing genius I tell people. On September 9th, 2009, at 9:00 in the morning, we did a parade down one of the streets, just like they do in the show. And we kicked off 9 homes for 9 families in 9 days.
Wow.
We actually built it in 7.5 days.
Remarkable. What a great story. And I have to ask, because I don't know if maybe you thought about this, what if Sister Stella wasn't a sister? Like, what if she wasn't? Would you even have humored her?
I'm not sure. I suppose her being a sister had, put a different spin on it.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I'd never been challenged by anybody, period.
Wow.
That on something like that, they're asking for money. They're asking for a handout. Okay. And I thought I was being extremely generous and being told I wasn't thinking big enough. And I thought I was thinking pretty big.
Yeah. A house is pretty big. If you told me you're going to give me a house, Rick, I'd be like, that's good.
I would have thought so. I would have thought so. She didn't see it that way.
Wow, that's awesome. What a great story. And I don't want to give too much away of the book here, but this is it just sort of shows exactly what's going through your head in terms of your leadership qualities and what it takes to take things to the next level and think bigger. But a lot of companies try to think bigger. A lot of companies have mission statements. Famously, Enron had values and mission statements. Mm-hmm. We all know how that turned out, Rick.
Right.
So how do you take those mission statements that either live on a pretty wall, that maybe they got, someone actually told me a story where a company put their values on their floor and they were like, wait a minute, so you're walking over your values? So people find different ways to put their values. So, but how do you take those that are on a poster, on a little card, maybe you got them up in the bathroom? How do you actually do that and put it in action day to day?
Well, for me, the action was, my principles were A to great. And so within our company, you can talk to anybody in our company and, they will know what A to great is. Now, I can go through the A to great with you, but, there's only one that they can remember every time. And that's number 8, which is to have fun. They all remember that, that I said I want them to always have fun. And they remind me of that all the time. Hey, we're out for number 8. We're out to have fun. But what you do is I put together, my A to great principles that are basically a cultural vision for the company. And I met with them constantly. I talked about it all the time. And you do it through stories. I think that's the easiest way to communicate that people will remember. I always include the Sister Stella as part of our mission statement to enrich the quality of life in our communities. That's how we give back, and we've done a lot of extreme builds since then. So we have constant stories to talk about. And it's that constant communication with your team, reminding them this is what the vision is for the company.
That's great. And so talking about this team and putting it together, in the book, you say every business rises and falls on the strength of its teams. So what do you look for when identifying these passionate associates? The word passion is very important to you. And I always find this is probably the toughest thing for hiring managers and HR people to deal with, because everything looks, everyone can look great on paper, but passion, man, that's really hard to put in a resume. What's that like software they use to like find the right resumes? Like, I don't know if you can find passion in that. So
No.
how do you do it?
We probably are no more successful at it than anyone else. It may result in some turnover, but I think, if you get somebody, and maybe you can just see a spark in them during the interview with something in their history says this person wants to be successful and is passionate about their job. If you provide the culture around them that helps them grow professionally, that's really what separates those from that succeed and those that don't succeed. Certainly we do not have the secret sauce and how I can find a passionate person. You won't know until they start working. And even after a couple of years, the person that was passionate, stuff happens. Okay. Life changes and they may not be as passionate as they were for a variety of reasons. But, our goal is to create a culture where, that passion can thrive.
Another one you use a lot is empathy. And you emphasize that empathy is a learned skill, not a natural one. And so I often joke, Rick, that it took a global pandemic for leaders to learn the word empathy. All of a sudden, like, yes, oh, yes, I am an empathetic leader. I understand the struggles of all these mortal human beings. So I always make jokes that for whatever reason, it over 2,000 years of people on the planet, it took this to happen. You said it's a learned trait. How did you learn it?
I watched other people, and I had to continually be reminded, about empathy, because it is not natural for me. That isn't the kind of person I am. And I think you're talking about, one executive I was with, and I just saw a natural empathy from this person. We were in a hospital setting. We get in, and I don't talk to anybody in an elevator in a hospital. He did. I mean, it was like, this was his little sister in the hospital. And oh my God, I'm so sorry what you're going through. And we're on our way to a meeting to talk about, instruction stuff and whatever. And, I just saw this, you can really, if you work at it, you can be empathetic. You can demonstrate empathy. I think we all have it inside, but generally most of us are not taught not to show it, to display it in any way.
And you credit a lot of Hubbell's success to having the team members having an entrepreneurial attitude, or I think people shorthand call it intrapreneurs, having sort of like this mindset of being an entrepreneur, but working within a company and working within a team. But sometimes that can be tricky because, as you know, with entrepreneurs, Rick, you probably deal with them a lot. They're willing to take big swings. And when you're part of a corporate culture with a couple hundred employees, not all 200 employees can be taking big swings. So how do you thread that needle of having your people embrace that entrepreneurial mindset, but not like the extreme parts of the entrepreneurial mindset?
I think I demonstrate to them, where entrepreneurship meant to me. I mean, when I started with the company, we were probably in 3 primary businesses. We now have 18 different businesses. Okay. And a lot of those come from looking at opportunities. Okay. And how can we take advantage of those opportunities? And they have saw it in action, how I look at it, and a lot of things they've come up with and they've done. And it's just part of that culture again. The biggest part about entrepreneurial culture is let people know you're going to fail. I mean, that's the most difficult thing. When I tell the stories, I have to tell stories about, not all my successes. I have to talk about, well, you probably didn't know that we tried this business and we tried this business. And I could see them looking at me like, what were you thinking? Well, there was a reason for everything we did. It wasn't like totally crazy, but without any reference point, it does sound crazy.
Yeah, and it's funny because you talk about, this book is warts and all. You talk about the failed projects like the ventures in Florida and in retail development.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. So you're still working for the company. Was that something where like some people around the office like, hey, Rick, maybe don't mention that thing that happened in Florida, or was it important to you to mention the stuff that just doesn't work? Because as we all know, no matter how big a company successful is, there are going to be some failures along the way.
Yeah, and I think it's if you're gonna encourage an entrepreneurial spirit within your an attitude within your company, you have to let people know that failure happens. We understand it. Uh, that doesn't mean we like it and love it, but we know that it's just part of the process. And I want them to feel that that they can take risks. And as long as the idea originally is vetted out, we're behind it. If it fails, it fails. We all bought in. We're all in this together.
That's great. No, good stuff. And on the subject of entrepreneurship, clearly FM Hubbell's story inspires you to this day. What part of his like entrepreneurial legacy kind of sticks with you? Because again, he had to take a lot of risks and became a huge figure. I mean, almost a super rock star in Iowa. Tell me about like how his journey influences you today.
I think with FM Hubbell, again, like so much of everything we do, he saw opportunities and he just went after them. I mean, we're the real estate part of his world. He created an Equitable Iowa insurance company, which was a huge insurance company. But he also, I kid people, I said he kind of played a monopoly game. He owned waterworks, he owned the railroad, and from what I can tell, he owned the railroad, but he didn't make any money at the railroad. I would say it was probably a lifestyle thing for him, but it wasn't like, hey, this is a great success. And owning the waterworks, you would have thought would have been great, but the city of Des Moines didn't really appreciate the fact that one person owned all the waterworks in Des Moines. So he ended up selling that to the city, but he works around it. So he took a lot of chances. He had a lot of success. He had a number of failures, and he just moved on from them.
That's good. Good stuff. So early in the conversation, we talked about Sister Stella and how you got involved in that incredible project. But that didn't stop you. I mean, you have continued through the years now working with organizations like Easter Seals, Ronald McDonald House. Tell me about the importance of those partnerships to why Hubbell's reputation is so stellar.
When you figured out how you can do something like do an extreme build and build a project in a week, which takes a huge amount of cooperation with your trade partners and a lot of great projects. I mean, our schedules, we're 24/7, and the schedule is broken down into 15-minute increments. And so it's, as I tell people, it's also the most cost inefficient way to build anything. Because, I've got a crew of people, maybe 20, 30 people, sitting in the parking lot waiting to start. Okay. And then boom, they're in there for a few hours doing all the drywall, for example, at one time. And so for us, it's important to our associates, and it's important to the community that we give back at such a high level. And it's important to me.
That's great. And on the ground floor level of what you do, and I know you're in the C-suite, the big boss with the hot sauce, but as someone who runs a company that builds homes, full disclosure, a couple years ago, I had a home built in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm not going to name the building company, but they create plans for these amazing homes, and they have projects and systems, I'm sure similar to what you guys have.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's the tradespeople on the ground with their hands building these houses. And let me tell you, Rick, there are a lot of problems with these houses. There's a lot of problems because there's just not enough talent to go around, especially like a community like Charleston, South Carolina, where they're building homes, hundreds of homes each week. So if you think about it, boy, if we're building all these homes, where are all these people to build the homes? We got the big companies, we got the Hubbles of the world, and we got the fill in the blanks. I'm not gonna say the other ones too. But the people, tell me about this disconnect between where you guys are in the corner office. You guys have these incredible systems in place, but when it comes down to the actual builds and the labor that it takes to get those builds done.
So the trades are a big part of what we do, and you're right. The builder, we provide the management, the supervision on a project. We provide the warranty work usually, but it's the trades, it's the carpenters, the plumbers, the electricians, the roofers, and we go on and on and on. And you're right. And their quality inspection, that's where I get into process improvement and accuracy and speed, measure twice, cut once.
Right.
That's the key to make sure that you build those products correctly. And yeah, we screw up sometimes, and it's really not us, but it's our team. There are subcontractors, there are suppliers, and we have to make it right. But we also work pretty hard within our community to grow the trade base. We're very involved in a number of initiatives to, from high school kids on, to try to encourage them to get involved in trades. Even though we may not hire them directly, all of our trade partners do. And we encourage them. Now, part of what we do, because we have huge maintenance staff with our apartments maintenance, our senior housing maintenance staff. And so to me, that's kind of like an introduction into a lot of the trades, because you got to be able to do a little bit of everything when you're a maintenance person. And a lot of those people go into our maintenance and then they move on, to be a plumber or electrician or something where they make even more money. But they make pretty good money just in maintenance. And, there's we helped spearhead an initiative now that the Home Builders Association has taken over called Build My Future. They had this last year, there were 7,000 high school students showed up for a one-day at the Iowa State Fairgrounds, a one day, and we had all these companies there where they could get their hands dirty doing things, okay, and learning skills that really don't require a college education. They require some sort of an apprenticeship program to go through. And we're starting to get more and more kids interested in that path, which is our future of our labor.
It's great. And it's great to hear, because I was just going to follow up with what's it looking like? Because you've seen the political discourse, how people are saying too many people are going to college when they don't have to go to college. They could go to trade school. But then again, if you look deep down in the roots of it, Rick, I mean, when I was a kid growing up, most schools had wood shop, or they had some sort of garage that you were, and that sort of stuff went away. But it sounds like you're seeing more of and thanks to companies like yourself and people in the industry, because I think you're kind of seeing the gap of we can't make humans. We got to find a way to educate people about the importance and sort of the benefits of following a career in the trades.
Yes, and they're starting to add those kind of things back to, the Des Moines School District has what's called Central Campus, and on that they have a whole building trade section.
Oh, great!
I think last year they had 400 students in the building trade section.
Wow!
But we have a lot of suburban schools around Des Moines that also have, a number of them build houses with their team. So they're all working on it as well.
Great. So the future is bright when it comes to not having a situation where they're basically, if you have a heartbeat, you can, and can carry a hammer, you're going to do a job. Now you're going to get more people that are really, passionate, using one of your words, to make a career out of this.
We're seeing a lot more of that. I mean, we still have a lot of work to do. I mean, we're not through it yet, but we're seeing a lot more kids. And as they look at, some of their people that, friends that go to college and say, well, you're taking on all this debt, you're really not making that much money. I don't know about you. I had to go to college, my mechanical ability is pretty limited. So I don't know that being a framer or a plumber who would have worked very well for me. But if you got that skill set, I mean, there's some great opportunities for you.
Out of curiosity, Rick, when you have a company like yours, how much do you want to know to be dangerous about what's happening on the ground? Like you said, you probably couldn't frame a house, you probably couldn't hang a window, but how much knowledge is important? Because like you said, you've worked with the company for years, you know how things are done, but how much do you know, like I jokingly say, to be dangerous, where you're like, oh, I see what they did wrong there, as opposed to it just being like a line in a memo?
Yeah, I probably, with my background, I'm a construction engineer, so I probably have a little more exposure to that, knowing how to do it. Okay. But again, knowing how to do it, being able to do it yourself. I've looked at my, remodeling work when I've gone in and put all the trim, and I go, there's a reason you hire somebody to do that.
Oh, that's good. That's good. All right. So wrapping things up here, as you start to transition leadership into the next generation, obviously this book and sort of like the leadership you've laid forth the last few years as CEO is important. But what do you hope, what do you hope your legacy is within Hubbell in terms of what you will be leaving behind?
Well, I hope the culture vision that I've laid out in Eight to Great stays with the company, and they keep utilizing it to expand into, geographic expansion and business expansions, and take advantages of the many opportunities that are around us. And I hope that continues. I hope it just doesn't stop. And, and I think it will. I think that the team knows how to look for opportunities, and they go after them.
Awesome. And if you could sum up the biggest lesson of the book and the idea of thinking bigger, what would that be? Like, after someone has gone through the book and set it down, what do you hope resonates with them the most?
Well, a couple things. I hope they look at it and say, if I asked you to create a culture vision for your company, here's what I did. That you would be able to sit down and do that. I gave 8 different ideas. You might only want 4, or you may want 12. I don't know. Okay. And as I end the book, and I tell people all the time, remember, it's just not that hard. Okay. And I say that to my team a lot. That's really not to be condescending. It's me. Don't make something more difficult than what it is. Okay. Really, what we're doing is pretty simple. People have been doing it for a long time. Okay. Don't make something more than what it is. Yeah. Okay. Just roll up your sleeves and get after it, and you'll get it done.
I think that's so tough, Rick, because I think a lot of people, especially in the white collar world, have to find ways to justify their existence or their role in the company. And they're like, Rick, it can't be easy. If not, I'd be out of a job. So it's, in a way, you have to sort of work around that self-defense mechanism people have when it comes to being part of a corporate culture.
Yeah. Our culture is, there's plenty to do, and there's plenty of opportunities out there. And if this one's easy for you, I got plenty to add on. Okay. I'm not lacking for my own ideas of other things we can jump into. So I've never had anybody come to me and say, I'm bored and I'm looking for something to do.
Good. That's good to hear. All right, Rick. I always wrap up these conversations taking folks behind the dedication of the book. And we kind of alluded to it, but you dedicate this book to Sister Stella Neill for challenging me to think bigger, and to Jim Hubbell, who gave me the opportunity to lead this amazing Hubbell team. So tell me about this connection, because I think to most people, if they don't read the book, Rick, they'd be like, wait a minute. You're dedicating the book to a sister and to a CEO of a company. Tell me why it was important to dedicate the book to both of them.
Because, I would say my trajectory for the company changed dramatically when Sister Stella challenged me to think bigger than I was. And even to this day, I'm constantly looking and saying, okay, Rick, is that all the bigger you can think? You should have thought bigger. You could have gone bigger. You could have done more. And, that drives me. And hopefully it drives a lot of our associates. And if you look at the book, remember, there was nothing in my past that said, I want to run Hubbell Realty Company. That was not, a written goal someplace that I put down. I was fairly successful in, what I was doing. And Jim Hubbell said to me, I want you to run the company and I want to retire. And I don't blame him. Okay. So he met my goals. I tell people, for all the goals in my life that I should have met, retiring at 55 is one of them I blew. I didn't even come close.
Well, that's all right. You're not a failure, Rick. You've done pretty good in your life. I lied. I have one more thing to read, because we bring up this idea of Jim Hubbell, passing the torch to you. And you see this happen a lot of times in terms of passing the torch down to people. I mean, famously, we talked about the Disney company later. Like, Robert Iger had the darndest time to pass things off, at one point making it seem like no one on this green earth could replace me. Is that something that is part of the Hubbell, like, sort of ethos of, like, making sure that it's almost like the next man up mentality is ready to lead? Because I think for a lot of companies, especially if your last name is on the company, I'm sure that's even hard to hand things down. What's your thoughts on that, especially as you go forward?
I know the first board of directors meeting I had after they made me CEO, Jim Hubbell said, and by the way, you have to put down your succession plan. I said, my succession plan? I just started. And they want to know your succession plan. Yeah. And so, from the very, so for 21 years now, I've been putting, twice a year, I meet with one of the executive committees and give them my succession plan. The person who's succeeding me has been with the company 32 years.
Wow.
Okay. Now I've been with the company 41. We get a lot of executives that stay with the company for a long time. And I'd communicated my transition with him several years ago. And I said, you could still blow it. Okay. But as long as you don't, this is your trajectory. And I would say, he would say, well, is there anything that keeps you up at night? I said, well, probably one thing. We're going to get to the finish line. You're going to look at me and says, Rick, I've changed my mind. I don't want to do it. Okay. Well, I wouldn't do that. Yeah. That's what everybody says until they do it. So I said, yeah, sometimes that will keep me up at night, but I'm pretty sure that we got a pretty seamless transition, and we've been doing it over a fairly long period of time.
But how do you handle the ego side of leadership? Most successful leaders have a little touch of ego. How do you manage that when it comes to planning for succession?
You do have to work with that. I mean, and I told people, and I'm sure Jim had to do it as well. I mean, and you just have to do it. I mean, it will not work if your ego gets in the way. And part of my transition is, may seem a little weird, but for me, I just made myself less available to people to communicate with. So they had to go to Kyle, my successor, to get questions answered. I was difficult to get a hold of. I wasn't in the office. They couldn't find me that easily. They had to go to Kyle. And so, if Kyle had an issue, he could contact me. But, I wanted him to handle the problems. Okay. Did he always handle them the way I would have handled? Probably not, but that's okay. I'm sure I didn't do it the same way Jim would have done it either. Okay. You just accept it because it doesn't really impact anything. And you're right. You just have to put your ego aside.
Yeah, great succession advice for folks. And this book is loaded with tons of advice. Think bigger, lead better. 8 to Great Principles for Organizational Success. His name is Rick Tollakson. Rick, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Joe.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Rick and our other amazing authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.